Welcome back, coaches. This is the Football Coaching Podcast. I am Daniel Chamberlain, co-host, here with Coach Joe Daniel, as always.
What's up, Coach?
It's another great week. It's hunting season, Joe. It's been knocking down deer like they're going out of style.
I went to a Bass Pro Shop a couple weeks ago.
That's the first step.
Yep. I mean, I go to Bass Pro Shop a lot, but I walk the entire store because normally I just go fishing stuff. But of course, we had the kids, so we went to the aquarium, and
you got to,
and then which credit to Bass Pro, like they monetize everything. So there's they know where the kids are going. So then there's that bin of stuffed fish.
Yeah,
you jerks. And of course, we bought a stuffed fish. We bought the small stuffed fish, but we had to buy a stuffed fish. My wife wanted flashlights. Like, you don't need to go to Bass Pro Shop to get flashlights.
It's the worst place to go to get flashlights.
The worst. They're going to cost too much, and But we walked the entire store. We ended up in the camping gear section. Ours is 2 stories. I don't know if they all, how they're all laid out.
I think most of them are.
Most of them are. I know it depends, but which involved going through the guns and being told that we're not getting a BB gun. So we're working on a cane bull right now, but we're not getting a BB gun. And I was like, well, maybe next year. And she's like, not next year. I'm like, this is the hill to die on.
My Beckett, when he turned 2, my best friend bought him his first Red Ryder BB gun.
Mm-hmm.
He still shoots it now. Actually, he just kind of started shooting it about in the last year.
Yeah.
I think as soon as he's comfortable aiming with the sight, I immediately was like, cool, it's time for a 22 and a 410 or a 20 gauge.
Yeah.
Like, let's go.
Yeah.
My little hunting buddy will be my little hunting buddy.
Yeah.
I don't know what the actual age is. I've seen pictures of 8-year-olds stalking deer down in the snow. So
sure,
6-year-olds can sit in a tree stand.
Sure. Yeah. I don't know when he'll do any of that. He'll go with granddaddy, not probably more so than me, but although we have to go to Georgia, so it's not with family. I don't have a hunt club or anything here, so it's not. There's no reason to. I don't have the weekends for that.
Hunting land in Georgia would be legit.
Yeah.
Here's the issue: is hunting season is football season. They're the same.
Well, that's always been my issue, and my issue has always been that I've always lived in places where you had to drive in a couple hours for land, and when I was in high school, I hunted right up until I was probably 12, and even then I would go after football season was over. With the way Georgia's season was the season would shut down, and then you would have 2 weeks of winter break basically. But by then it does get very cold in Georgia at times. And so it'd be 9 degrees and this is not cool, but I felt like every time I went, that was the way it was, but there was just no movement. There was going was just to say, I still go. But yeah, we practiced on Saturdays. And so when I got to high school, it wasn't even feasible.
There's no hunting.
I would be at practice until noon, right? Am I going to go drive 2 hours and, then hunt Sunday morning and come home? How is this going to work?
Here's the deal. Duck hunting is in the spring, early winter, but late winter.
Right.
For some of us. Do y'all even have ducks on the East Coast? How do ducks do that?
We do have ducks, yes. Matter of fact, I have a picture of...
I'll fly out there.
We'll just send a picture of a duck that he shot this weekend.
There you go. Oh,
I have always... by the way, we'll move on from this because what I always enjoyed... I never really went. I went once or twice. But I always got into turkey calls. So I learned how to use a mouth call, and I learned how to use a slate and all that sort of stuff. I just never went, but I was always into it. And so I was like, this would be kind of a funny, and again, I was at Bass Pro. Probably if I go to Walmart, it's different. But I was like, I bet my son would find these entertaining. Not to use it, but for me to use a mouth call. And those daggone things were $30 for
everything's...
I was like, again, maybe if I go to Walmart, it's different. But I was like, I remember picking these up for $3 and just come on.
Yeah.
What is it?
I'm a big First Light guy.
So can I just play?
Right. Does it kill it?
Does it have a turkey cell phone number and is hey, come over. Let's get some beers. Yeah, come to the third tree on the right, and then just pow.
Get some beers. I love
it. That's the turkey call that I want for $30 is an actual call the turkey and pretend you're its buddy and get him over there.
If it came with a decoy, you almost could. We will move on because I could talk hunting for the rest of the night. It sucks that hunting and football are the same season because I am such an addict that I end up like, it's just wild.
Yeah.
Anywho, we came here tonight to talk about kind of end of season stuff. Obviously, we're both out of the playoffs. Both been out for a couple weeks now. 3 people in my network are going to the state championship game or still in it at least. Kenny, I think, is in the semis.
Nice.
In Arkansas for 4A. Bo, who's been on the podcast before, Coach Collins, his team, and he's assistant coach, but they're in the state championship game. They play Friday. And then Jim Ransom, who was on a couple weeks ago, the team he helps with is back in the state championship. They play Thursday. So as of this recording on Tuesday, December the 3rd, there's 3 people in my small network that are still playing for the ship. So I think that's pretty cool. I'm sure you've got friends up there that are championship bound as well. But it is nice to see people who are in our network because we all think football the same way, right? Like the systems are a little bit different. There's tweaks here and there, but it's all kind of the same stuff. And those guys are still at it. So there is something right there in the way that we're doing football.
Yep. Yeah. I picked up a game. I found out, I did not know this. I did not know that we had a radio station that had games on the weekend. And I just happened to end up on that station. And it was a Saturday afternoon. And I don't know if they always do Saturday afternoon games or if they do Friday night games. It doesn't matter if they do Friday night games. When am I going to hear it? But I turned it on. And one of the teams one of the really good teams that on our schedule in our conference was actually playing. I thought it was a college game. I was like, I thought maybe it was Randolph-Macon because Randolph-Macon is still playing in the Division III playoffs. But so I listened to it for a little bit and I was like, oh crap, it's Dinwiddie. They lost their third round game to another powerhouse. So, they just eventually you get to that point where it's like one of the things I like about we have the schools, but it seems like there's always teams don't get to be powerhouses forever. They can be powerhouses, but they don't just reel off like we don't have anybody at that Bixby level.
9 out of 10.
Right, 9 out of 10. We have teams that'll get 2 or 3 in a row, and usually it's a player. Hopewell got a couple in a row, and Travion Henderson was here. And if you're playing 3A football and Travion Henderson is here, like they would have gotten another in a row, but this was the COVID year, and so they played in the spring, and he just didn't. Smartly did not play. I think he was already gone. So like that's you'll get runs like that, but we have a lot of teams that are at the top and some teams that stay there, but then some teams that get into it here and there. So it's always interesting to watch the playoffs and see these teams, who's on the rise and that kind of stuff. It's pretty cool. And that's kind of what we're seeing right now is who are the teams that are really have made it to this level.
Speaking of teams that are still in it, Antonio Graham, who's been on the podcast recently, he's in the state championship, undefeated his first year as a head coach.
Nice.
With the Owasso Rams, and he is trying to prevent Bixby from being 10 of 11. So,
yes.
They already beat him to open the season. Owasso beat Bixby. I think he came on right after that, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so.
And anyway, so there you go. Yet another one in our network that's state championship bound.
Awesome.
It's good to know to be wrapped up with so many successful coaches. But we are talking about tonight, just kind of that closing out. Last year, if you're looking for the equipment stuff, and not that we won't talk about it again, but last year about this time we put out that episode. How do you check in equipment and organize it so that you quit losing money, quit bleeding money, and you don't have to fundraise as much, right?
Probably the most important thing that the amazing thing is how many of your athletic directors and principals and school board and everything don't realize that bleed is happening because they don't know how to manage money either. If you learn how to manage money and manage equipment, you can free up so much. I've seen so many programs that are just like so poorly managed, and money is just not well managed. Everybody thinks they don't have enough money, but then they've got money just leaking out. So if you're not sure, you should go back and listen to those episodes on equipment. You need to have everything with a barcode on it. You need to have everything inventoried. You need to have everything with a number, a code, something. You need to know exactly where it is. And you need to go to your principal or your athletic director. If you're the head coach, you need to go to your principal, your athletic director, your school board, and show them this is how much money we lost. This is the system that we implemented to solve that, because they need to understand that money is walking out the door at times. I dealt with it without Amelia. They had a cage that went up to about 2 feet from the ceiling where we kept all of our footballs. And when I got the head coaching job, I'm gone for a few months. When I get the head coaching job, I come in there and we have no footballs. And that is because, and by the way, this was not a new issue. Kids have been doing this forever because it's a PE locker room that's basically unmonitored, right? Kids just go in and get the football.
Jeez.
And the
$100.
school, how much would it cost to extend the gate, change the gate, put some barbed wire at the top of the gate, do something and fix that? And they will not, so they don't spend that $100. And so what happens? 12 $80 footballs walk out the door.
That's crazy.
So we just lost, $900 because to them, it's not that they didn't know about it. Everybody knows about it. The kids know how to get the football. So you've got to go to again, this is not our topic tonight, but you've got to handle that stuff. There's a Dan Kennedy, who was my favorite marketing crotchety old man, talks about he bought a company that sold self-improvement tapes, cassette tapes back in the 80s or whatever. And the first thing he did was go over all the books. And they had this big room, and in the middle of the big room was a big cage, and all the self-improvement books, the self-improvement tapes were all in the cage. And it was like, nobody's going to steal self-improvement tapes. Like, no, people aren't stealing self-improvement. But when we went over the books, they had 50 employees, and they were going through like 5,000 rolls of toilet paper. So he took all of the toilet paper, moved all of the audiobooks out of the cage, and put all the toilet paper and paper towels inside the cage, and instantly, saved the company thousands of dollars right off the bat. That's happening in your football program. Is you're like, oh, these helmets are $400. Nobody's stealing the helmet. Now they might steal the helmets, but that's not the things that are disappearing. The things that are disappearing are the footballs and the practice pants and the mouthpieces. The mouthpieces aren't a big deal. We always made such a big deal about the mouthpieces. I'll end on this. We always made this huge deal about the mouthpiece. Oh, you got to bring us, if you lose your mouthpiece, you got to bring us $1 for a new mouthpiece. I had 27 kids on the varsity, 51 kids in total. We're buying new practice pants. We're buying footballs. We're buying $6,000 worth of jerseys.
But by God, but
we're in a panic because the mouthpieces are disappearing. And I said, I called the BSN guy, which was the most frustrating thing in the world because they don't have their crap together. I called him and I said, how much are mouthpieces? And he said, a box of 75 is $75. I did the math real quick. I said, will you send me 4 boxes? And I'm never going to argue if the mouthpiece disappeared, I'm going to hand a kid a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
It's $1. I'm spending all of this money and I'm worried about, and all the kids don't eat mouthpieces. It's like 3 of them. And you know that you have like 3 kids that eat mouthpieces. It's like, whatever. Anyway.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, practice pants are just walking out the door and nobody's doing anything about it.
I'm so glad we're beyond practice pants at this point. Everyone just wears shorts. So
yeah, I mean, yeah, right. But
it's such a good deal.
Neat. We had an entire
another thing that's useless.
But I don't know what your officials are like. Our officials think it's super important that the knees are covered. This is their
by the books.
Singular focus is that the knees are covered.
But I watched knee pads the size of a quarter count as knee pads this year.
Absolutely. So
it's not the old school, like we wore the ones that like were a knee pad with a thing over the top.
We had a knee pad that was the same size as the thigh pad.
Yes.
Which those are small now too. But we kept them all. This is something else to think about. We kept them all in a trash can. And in that time period when we were gone, because they were head coach shopping, a industrious janitor emptied the trash can. And so I had to get knee pads, emergency knee pad order. Luckily, they're not expensive because they're the size of a dime. But
that's tough.
So anyway,
We're going to look at season closeout today in a different way, and we're going to look at evaluation of the program as a whole. And obviously, that means evaluating the individual pieces. So we're going to kind of talk about evaluating yourself, the coaches on staff. We'll talk about the playbook a little bit, right? How you evaluating players that are coming back, junior high moving up, all of those good things. So hopefully we can get to all of those, and it won't take too awful long.
I don't think we'll get far. I think we're going to start with the coaches and work from there.
There we go. Before we do, let's pay bills because we didn't last time.
Yeah, you can go to joedanielfootball.com, joedanielfootball.com/system to download a free guide that I put together on how to build the ultimate defensive system for your football program. It talks about what is a system, what really is a system, what needs to be in your system, the process for installing your new system, and the 5 mistakes that you must avoid within your system, whether you're keeping the one that you have now and need to avoid those mistakes going forward, or if you are installing a new defensive system. And if you're an offensive coach, it's going to be very similar. So you can start with that one. I'm sure I have an offensive guide eventually, but they don't write themselves. So go ahead and check it out. Go to joedanielfootball.com/system.
Athleticspeedmovement.com. Go there. Now's the time. Start your speed training program January, whatever you come back, 7th, 8th, 10th. I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's really early and sometimes it moves on into January. But athleticspeedmovement.com, where we have taken Dell Basquet's 46, 47. I'm beyond remembering years of experience from the very first speed coach in the NFL, where he took a rookie running back out of Arkansas and made him an all-pro running back for his first 2 years in the league with the speed and agility system. You're talking a 12-week program. Get it started in January. When you get everybody back from baseball and basketball and all the other things, track, then you can start it over if you want. But there is multiple levels there. So you don't have to start back at 0. You can have different groups in different places. Lots of flexibility within the program. athleticspeedmovement.com. Go over there and have the fastest team you can possibly have. I don't want to say the fastest one ever because you may have had Travion Henderson before, and that would be the fastest player who would increase your average a lot.
It helps.
Maybe he could have used athletic speed movement.
They've always had a couple of Jesus. There's always 2 kids there.
There you go.
Never just one.
Speedmovement.com. Question 1. Let's jump into this. So what makes up a full program evaluation? So we kind of talked a few pieces there, but when you're looking at, I'm going to evaluate where we are now. The game's over. The season's over. We've put our stats in on the last tape. I hope y'all went back and statted your last film because Jesus Christ. Anyway.
I haven't.
Where are we going?
I can't do that. Although I don't do that. I don't do that. Yes.
Oh, okay. So someone has, hopefully. Where do we go from here?
Well, you need to figure out ultimately the goal of an off-season evaluation. You don't just do an off-season evaluation to do it and say we did it. So start with the end in mind. What is the goal? The goal is obviously the goal should be within each area to isolate the things that you need to do, preferably the 1, 2, or 3 things that you need to get done in order to be a better football team next year. A lot of people will start that with goals of, to win a state championship or whatever, which is fine. But, if we look at it in that light, it can be very difficult you're not going to find one thing in your fundraising that's going to, if we put our silos together and we say, okay, fundraising is one, and we put that silo over here and we say fundraising, what is the one thing we're doing fundraising is going to win a state championship? Not a daggone thing unless it's an NIL and you're going to bring in, somebody that runs really fast.
Oklahoma coaches.
Well, yes, you Oklahoma coaches, you can do that. We have NILs. You could probably do that here if you wanted to. It's probably illegal, but now, if he's maybe there's a kid that's in your building and you can, maybe there's a kid that plays baseball and you can get him an NIL to come out and play football. I don't know. Like maybe there is a legal use to that. A lot of the way that I'll tell you what the legal use of it here is that I know it's not a big deal in football. It's happening more in basketball. I know that and this is a total side shoot. So maybe this is important to your program. The purpose of using NILs is to keep kids from moving. So legally, I can get my kid an NIL so that he doesn't
Go somewhere
go
else.
somewhere else that's offering him one. And when we talk about these with high school kids, we're talking, can I get a $100 NIL from the local car lot or something like that? We're not talking about and by the way, the people that want them most of the time aren't the kids. Just a side note. It's usually not the kids asking for the NIL money, but we can't deal with them. So, well, actually we have to, they're one of our things. But so, we look at all of the different areas of our program. So we got to look at our coaching staff, and you can split that up. If you have enough coaches, you can split that up into offensive and defensive staff. I'm trying to get through this. I have a very sore throat. Our entire family is sick. So if
My wife is as well.
yeah, our son.
I didn't know. We could have postponed, I suppose.
Yeah, we got to get it done because I'm not going to be here. By the way, I'm not going to be here next Tuesday, and then I'm taking off winter break. So we got to figure out some times. Anyway, you look at your coaching staff, and you could split that into offense and defense if your staff's big enough. But you've got to go through the evaluation of the coaching staff. Do we have everybody in the right places? Is there, are we on the same page, everything? And then, of course, you got your, if you're a head coach of a varsity program, you've got your JV program, your middle school program, your freshman program, whatever you have. If you're the head coach and you're leaving those things up to chance, stop doing that.
Right.
Don't just hand that over to somebody. Now, we had a staff here in Virginia that I was very familiar with, that the JV guy was the JV guy for decades. The head coach, and they worked together for decades. He didn't have to mess with that. He had a guy, but he wasn't handing it over to some 23-year-old kid and going, just tell me what, make sure I don't have to have any meetings. And I feel like that's a lot of coaches doing that. So you evaluate all the levels of your program. So as you start to sort these things out, you see that, okay, we've got to do an evaluation of the JV. We got to do an evaluation of the freshmen. We got to do an evaluation of the middle school. You need to evaluate your feeder programs and your relationship with those feeder programs going forward, because how important, more important now than ever. If you're in Oklahoma, you better be having a relationship with the local rec programs, because that kid can just as easily enroll in the other school.
That's right.
So
open enrollment's a son of a gun.
Yeah. So, but that's true here too. I mean, it shouldn't be, but it's some of our counties have open enrollments, and some of them don't. But also, it's not. Unfortunately, it's not that hard to get an address in a neighboring school district. So we have to be on top of that. So you're evaluating all of those. You're evaluating your coaches. You're evaluating your, the X's and O's you need to evaluate, but each one has to be in a silo. Each one has to stand on its own. So we're evaluating the varsity staff. We're evaluating the JV staff. We're evaluating the varsity playbook. We're evaluating the JV X's and O's. Was what the JV doing, congruent with the things that we're doing on varsity, and was it what we wanted? Is it bringing our guys along correctly? All of that sort of stuff. And then we look at, what's our academics looking like? We're going to have all these kids eligible. What's our off-season weight program looking like? What's our off-season speed program looking like? What's our off-season 7-on-7 schedule looking like? God forbid you have to do that, but ours is looking short.
There's so much hate for it out there.
I
see why. But man, I feel like if there was a 9-on-9 run league to counter it, but you can't physically.
Well, my issue, I don't hate 7-on-7. Now, what I hate about 7-on-7 is the only way that it really gets done is a lot of times is taking up a Saturday morning. When I was in high school, we didn't do that. We did 7-on-7 on a Wednesday night. But again, everybody was 5 minutes away. And so we would just get together on a Wednesday night and play 7-on-7. But now also we had big schools and, enough players that weren't playing other sports in the spring that we could do that. My other issue is that if you can get the right group of coaches together, it can be a lot of fun and it can be very productive. And if you get the wrong group of coaches together, you have guys who think that they're going to win a national championship in March. And I don't have time for that. This is 7-on-7. This is a dumb drill. Do we compete? Yeah, we want. I'll do a couple tournaments to compete, but I want a, let's get 6 weeks. Let's get together 3 or 4 teams where everybody's got the same goals in mind. Here's the measuring stick for me. We're playing 7-on-7, a game, not in a tournament. I'm not talking about the tournaments. We'll do a couple tournaments, but if I'm playing a 7-on-7 weekend league, weekly league type thing, and you run, and my court, let's say you do this and you throw a pass and it's wide open. Can I stop and have you line up in the formation and show my guys where we blew the coverage? Is that going to be a problem for you? If it is, I don't want to be in your 7-on-7 league.
Right.
Because this is a practice. 7-on-7 is a drill. It's not a sport. 7-on-7 is a drill. It's Pascal. It's a drill. It's an offensive drill. It is defensive, but it's offensive advantage, because what have we taken away? What have we taken away from the offense? The hardest part, pass protection. What have we taken away from the defense? Pass rush, where I could just put an animal down there. And now we give you 4 seconds and you're doing double moves and stuff. Like, it's an offensive bias drill. Doesn't mean the defense doesn't get anything out of it. But so anyway, we got to look at 7-on-7. We got to look at academics. We got to look at, or that's off season. 7-on-7 goes under off season, physical player stuff. Academics, recruiting, because we should all be involved. This is where recruiting starts to pick up. They've got the earliest recruiting window, opening up. Was it December 8th or something like that? It's opening up this year.
Yeah, here pretty soon.
Yeah.
You're talking about well, I don't know about the recruiting one. Oh, the signing day is here pretty quick.
It's the window is opening very, very soon, because it's one of the things with all of the. It might be sooner. That might be Wednesday. It might be tomorrow. That might be transfer portal. I'm not sure. But they open up very, very soon, and so we've got to be involved in recruiting, figuring all that stuff out. You got to, you don't have to evaluate that right now, but that it's happening. So that's what we need. We need to look at all of this, and the first thing we need to do, that's all the things that we need to prepare right now. And I think where we want to focus is looking back on what happened during the season. And so that involves, like you said, evaluating the coaches, evaluating the playbooks, evaluating the players. So that includes self-evaluation, by the way, for the coaches and the head coach and everything. Evaluating the players. If you had things like parents and stuff like that, you might want to evaluate that stuff, but that's an ongoing deal. Parents, administration, problems that came up there. Evaluating practice schedules, evaluating practice preparation, what we want to find. And everybody's different. So what we want to find in all of this is, first of all, does anything need to go? Person, playbook. Is there anything that we're doing that is not worth it or is actively,
for me,
hurting us? That's the easiest thing to do, addition by subtraction, right? Here's addition by subtraction. We got one coach on staff who is insubordinate, who is sabotaging from within. He's fired. If you can do that. If you can't do that, then you need to have that conversation with him. So this is the deal. Right. But the easiest thing to do is to take that coach who's sabotaging the program from within and fire them. Boom, instantly better.
Yeah.
Like, there we go. So can I find those things? Is my playbook too bloated? Boom, I just cut, 8 things out of the playbook. There we go. Whatever it is. So we want to find the low-hanging fruit, but then we want to find the things that we need to work on within each one of those areas that are going to make us a better football team. And you have to look at this from a standpoint of, don't leave anything off as you go through these evaluations. You want to find, if you can find 100 things and each one of them makes you 1% better, that's what, it's too often that we're like, okay, the thing that we need is the air raid. Like, no.
Right.
No. Nothing against the air raid. It could be wing. Replace that with anything you want. Replace it with pistol power offense system. I don't care. Replace it with wing T. Replace it with gun T. Replace it with pistol wing T. Replace it with anything that you want. Replace it with air raid. Replace it with double wing. Doesn't matter. We go, this is what we got to do. We got to run the 33 stack. That's not it. That might be 1%. But that's not, and if you do it wrong, it's worse than 1%. But that's not what we're looking at. Is how can we run better practices? How can we have better staff cohesion? How can we do a better job of evaluating, game planning? How can we do a better job with our film breakdown? How can we because if I can find little things in each one of those that are actually easy to define, easy to enforce, easy to implement, then we change the program. But I'm not talking about like we need to evaluate and figure out what offense we want to run next year.
You covered basically everything there when it comes to full program evaluation. I don't think you left any meat on the bone for me. So we'll just jump into the second question here.
I used to do these with nobody else here, so
it's been 3 years, Joe.
But it was 10 years before that.
Okay, I'm 30% there. So part 2 here. Why is it important to do these? And I think you kind of covered it there anyway, right? You've got to addition by subtraction, the 1% better. If it's 100 little things, the idea is just we've got to be better than we were. And it doesn't matter. It could be evaluating staff, and we're going to get into the hows and a little bit more directly, but maybe it's a clinic you need. Maybe it's your certain coaches suck at making drills, and so you're never actually improving on your weaknesses throughout the season, right? Like there's a lot of things you need to evaluate that go under these broader heads. Practice, right? Well, what about practice, right? So I think looking and seeing where we struggled. If you're a team that read a quote recently that said, something about like coordinating, like the best coordinators are the ones that can make adjustments at halftime, right? It doesn't matter if you go in with the best game plan, but they figure it out in 2 quarters, they're going to make adjustments. Can you? So is that something you struggle with? You just have to keep the same game plan from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, finding your weaknesses, right? I mean, the reason it's important is because you've got to improve next year, because that's how we measure things, right? We don't ever want to go backwards. We always want to progress. We always want to get better. Even if that's 1 win a year better, well, guess what? In 10 years, you're undefeated, or however many games your state plays. I found out recently that
a lot of states play 9.
9 games, and then everyone's 10th game is a playoff game.
I want to say Illinois plays 9 and doesn't have scrimmages.
Yeah. Brandon, one of the JDFB guys, I've been doing a side show with him just talking recruiting and stuff, and he was like, oh yeah, there's teams here that are 0-9 and they make it to the playoffs.
Oh yeah, we have that.
What? That's crazy. Well, yours is different. You can get your butt whipped by a bunch of really good teams and go, that's fine.
Well, there's only a couple of regions that only have 8 teams. They weren't originally designed that way.
Gotcha.
Programs folded and stuff, and they ended up with 8 teams. Gotcha. And we are very, very slow about realignment here.
That's so strange. Well, we're going to do it for a 3rd time in 3 years this year, so it's going to be great. But that's why. That's the importance of it, is you need to be progressing. We'll jump into the third part here so we can really talk the meat and potatoes. And that says, how do you do the evaluation for each part of the program? So I know you said you want to start with the coaches. I think we should start with ourselves.
Sure.
Because regardless of your head coach, analyst, assistant, whatever, you've got to evaluate yourself. So what are ways that we can go through and evaluate ourselves and be brutally honest with that evaluation?
Well, I want to touch on one thing that I talked to one of our coaches, one of our client coaches today, and he mentioned that his school, not him, but his school, sends a survey to all of the parents to evaluate the coaches. He doesn't get to make this decision, but I told him if he has any decision about it, don't read them. Ignore them completely. So as you go into this evaluation, understand one thing. Don't listen to anybody who's not qualified to make an evaluation. The players are qualified to evaluate their place in the program. Certainly do we communicate with the players? Absolutely. I'm not asking you for your opinion on play calling. I send this to the parents as well and the administration. You're not qualified. Now, if you've got an administrator who has 9 state championship rings, he's qualified. But
get him on staff. What are you doing?
Yeah, get him on staff. But he's qualified to give some advice. But honestly, his position is not to tell me what to do X and Y. If you want to call, if you want to have, even if I had an administrator who had 9 state championship rings, I would say, if you want play calling input, now I'll listen to you. If you're coming at it from just like, I want to give some advice and I have questions, obviously you don't ignore that. But if you want to really get to decide what we call, you need to be on staff.
Yeah.
And guys will say, well, I don't have time to be on staff. That's fine. You don't get to make decisions on play calling. So as we go into this evaluation, as we evaluate coaches, as we evaluate ourselves, Like, do we talk to parents? 100%. We talk to parents about their child, talk to their child about their child's performance if they want to. We don't talk X's and O's with them. We'll talk about their grades. We'll talk about their recruiting. We'll talk about how we can work with them, because, it takes a village. And unfortunately, in the way that the world is laid out today, we don't have a village. So this is the closest we can get. That's why childcare costs so much. You're not supposed to have to pay for it, but that's where we're at. So, like, now we're help. Now you're getting some free childcare again. So we'll help. You get to be 14, boom, free childcare. Don't listen to anybody who's not qualified. Just don't. That's going to just frustrate you. Like, I don't want to hear the athletic director's opinion of our offense. I don't care. And I know that they're your boss and everything. You've got to find a way to let them know you don't care. And if you can't, then you might be in the wrong place, or you just need to figure out a way to drown it out. Because it's no different than standing on the sidelines on Friday night and listening to the fans in the stands tell you what to call. You're going to screw up. So as we go to evaluate, we listen to the people who are qualified. I have to understand what makes somebody qualified. My 8th grade coach, not my 8th grade coach, I'm talking about your 8th grade. If you have a program where you have an 8th grade coach, let's say, or a middle school coach, and your middle school coach was never at one of your practices because they were at their practices.
Right.
They're not qualified to evaluate your practices. They're not. They weren't there. They're not qualified. I'm not asking for the 8th grade coach's input on the varsity program. I want his input on the middle school program's relationship with the varsity coaches or with the varsity head coach. I want that input. But, if I ask the middle school, and I do think this goes back to tough conversations. I like the idea of sending out surveys. They can be blind, but I prefer they not be.
Right.
Because it's adult conversations. You can make the kids blind because they're not adults. But adult conversations, if you're on my staff and you don't like the way that I'm doing things and you don't have the balls to come talk to me, you probably shouldn't be on my staff. And I definitely don't care about your opinion. Like, I don't care about the opinions of a guy who doesn't have any balls. You lose that. You lose that privilege. Now, also, if you're a tyrant who everybody's scared to talk to, that's a you problem. But you're the head coach, so you get to do that until you don't get to anymore. I would just advise against it. So if I send a survey to the middle school coach and I'm the varsity head coach and ask questions, and when I do this, what I would recommend to you is if you send out a survey, the survey is just like a pre-evaluation. Eventually, we're going to sit down. So eventually, me in the 8th grade, this isn't all the conversation that me as the head coach, I'm not the head coach, but if I was the head coach, eventually, the survey is like me gathering data. And like, if part of that survey is give me your evaluation of the program, give me your evaluation of the players, give me your evaluation of me, that kind of stuff. But understanding that the 8th grade coach isn't evaluating the varsity program. Now you can evaluate me as the head coach and my relationship with you. Are there things that I did, or are there things that hopefully these can go multiple ways, go both ways. Are there things that I did that really helped facilitate your program that I could do more of? Are there things that I did that hurt your program that I could do less of? Are there things that I didn't do that you needed? That's the kind of things that I'm looking for from a middle school, from a varsity staff assistant. Now we're getting more into, what are the things that happen on our staff as a varsity program? And by the way, I don't need your input on the middle school program, right? Other than, you can say we need players coming from the middle school to be more developed. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Good. Moving, because that's your realm. Guys came to you and they weren't ready. Got it.
Right.
Got it. I'll address that with the middle school program. But that's where it ends. I don't need your suggestions. I mean, I'll get your suggestions if I want them, but like, that's really where the evaluation, and that's where, like, does somebody have enough cachet that I want their opinions? But I think you should get evaluations and you should evaluate yourself as well. It's really hard to do, though.
Well, self-evaluation, excuse me. Yes. If it isn't like if I know what my goals are as a coach and I'm not being led towards my goals at my current stat, that's a self-evaluation I think you have to do as
oh,
well.
well, that's easy. What are the goals and are we getting there? Yeah.
Right. If I want to be a play caller someday and I've now been on staff 3 years and I've yet to even call a JV game, I probably need to go somewhere else.
Well, you got to
Or
evaluate the
look in
situation.
that
Yeah.
look in the mirror and be like,
I think
do I not know enough? Am I doing everything I possibly can to be the play? Now, if I can call the exact same game you called on Friday, maybe we need to have that conversation. Like you said, just have the audacity to stand up to someone and say, hey, here were my goals. I've told you about it for 3 years in a row. They're not being met. Maybe we need to change something. Or can we just move forward and reach these goals? When you talk about as a head coach or someone that's has people under them, right? You are someone's superior. Yes, it is very, very hard to do a self-evaluation because we do not know most of the time, one, how to evaluate leadership. All right, that's not something that football coaches know how to do. And two, we do not know what we sound like to others. We don't know how we're perceived. You honestly don't know what you're doing most of the time in a how's the outside world receiving this, right? We often have grandiose ideas in our mind and we think that we look a certain way. We think we're doing things a certain way. And then everyone else is like, that's not how that's coming across at all. And maybe that's just me because I'm weird. I'm awkward. But I have a feeling it's not just me. Because when you start looking at leadership development and that mirror of truth, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm not doing any of this, right? Leadership isn't just yelling and calling football plays. That's not leadership, even on a football team. So I think that you have to reach into your subordinates. There has to be that.
Yeah.
Here's the questions. What are things I did good? What are things I did bad? How would you change? Maybe it was a certain situation, right? We've all had that very weird, sticky situation throughout a season. I can tell you, for me, my head coach at the time handled it very well. When I had to get in the ass of a senior offensive tackle whose mama was on the school board, and he was just being a turd, and I was trying to coach up a linebacker and get them both to give effort, and I lost my job over it, right? That was a crappy situation for my head coach at the time, but I thought he handled it well in the moment, and it's not his fault that I got let go. You know what I mean?
Right.
And even though he went to bat for me, like that's just one of those stupid situations you're going to have to deal with. So there may be that you need to put into the evaluation. Like, look, we had this elephant in the room. Let's talk about it, and then we'll move past it.
Yep. There are situations, that you want to talk about because you want to talk about them so that you handle them better next time. Really is the only advantage. That and getting it out of the way and talking about it. But from a self evaluation, like I guess it has to start with the results. Are you getting the results that you want? And like, what are the frustrations? Like you mentioned that, if I've been here for 3 years and I want to be a play caller, we get way too many coaches who are like instantly, this guy won't listen to me. This guy won't, they won't let me call plays. Why? Like there's, we tend to, and when I was 20, well, I got to call plays when I was like 26, but then I thought I should be a head coach. I shouldn't be a head coach. At 27, I shouldn't have been a head coach, but I thought I should be. And a lot of 27-year-old coaches that way. We tend to think we know everything, especially when, we talk about Dunning-Kruger effect and, you have those first few years where you have the first year or two where you're completely lost. Then you think you know everything. And then as you do it a little longer, you realize you don't know anything. And our 30-year coaches all mostly know that they don't know anything. And if you've been in this for 4 or 5 years and you think you know everything and should be doing everything, and a 30-year veteran is telling you that you don't, they're probably right. Now, then you ask, like, how can I get more experience, or where do I go? What do I do? But you've got to look a lot at how you're being perceived. That's, you may know everything, but you're being perceived as being difficult or, whatever, or you're being perceived as not knowing what you think you know. The players, how do the players perceive you? And this all starts like the ultimate question. The way that you can do this is look at every element. Like, let's say that you're a defensive line coach. What are the things that didn't go well on the defensive line this year? And I could look at, well, in practice, we have 6 defensive linemen because we're a small school, and in practice most days I only had 4 or 5 there during individuals. Okay, that's a problem. 1. Number 2, we didn't spill down blocks. Okay, that's a problem. Boom. Our pass rush wasn't very good. Okay, that's a problem. Our alignment wasn't, our alignment was not consistent. Okay, that's a problem. Our stance was, hopefully it's not all of these, but if it is, we didn't make many tackles. We didn't cause pressure. We didn't, whatever, so on and so forth. We look at what are the things that we did on defensive line. If you look at that and you go, well, we had crappy players who didn't want to listen and don't care. This entire self-evaluation is a waste of time. You just wasted 48 minutes listening to this podcast for no good reason. You are wasting your time. You are not going to get better. You probably aren't going to be a very good football coach ever until some better players walk through the door. So
doesn't just happen.
No, doesn't usually happen unless you have NILs. So either you need to get some money, so you need to go. If that's what you decided, you need to start evaluating fundraising and your recruiting skills, which is not what I want to do. So then the process becomes, here are the things, and you do this for everything. So I didn't like the interaction with the head coach. I didn't understand what the defensive coordinator wanted us to do. Every week I was confused about the game plan. So again, from the defensive line, staff meetings were a waste of time because we never accomplished anything. The stats never got entered in quick cuts or in huddle. We didn't get exchange film until Sunday afternoons because nobody ever bothered to track down the opposing team and find film and all that sort of stuff. Okay. All of these things. Make your big list. Ask other people. Do the surveys. I think it's good to ask other people, even if you are on staff. Help me. Like, hopefully you have a good staff and you can send them. I was just looking at, I always bring up Dan Sullivan and unique ability, and there's a evaluation that I haven't done this yet, and I will be doing it soon. You'll be getting a letter on this email eventually. But I've done the personal evaluation, but there's another evaluation where you send a letter or an email to somebody and you say, I'm doing this unique ability, finding my unique ability, and could you tell me what let me read one here. I'm currently reading a book about a concept called unique ability. This concept is based on the idea that everyone possesses a combination of talents, interests, and capabilities unique to that individual. This is an interesting thing to do as a football coach because we're mostly talking about bad things. This is things you should do more of. I'd really appreciate it if you would help me identify my own unique ability by considering the following question and send me back an answer. What do you see as my unique ability? My unique ability includes my talents and abilities, characteristics that describe me, what I'm good at, how I do things, what you can count on me for, and any other distinguishing features you see about who I am. Be very grateful if you respond in the next 2 weeks, blah, 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 blah. The purpose of that is to then get, try to find 5 people, 8 people, whatever, 3 people better than none, to respond and find out the things that people look at you and think, man, he's really good at this. That's a cool way of doing it. That's a good personal evaluation thing. I don't really want to go out and email everybody and say, what do you think I suck at?
Right.
I'd rather find out the things I'm good at.
They're going to lie to you anyway.
They're not, unless they got to have some
really good friends,
big balls to tell you that. Okay, to tell you what you suck at. Otherwise, you're not going to get an honest response. But you can get this, and then you have to evaluate yourself. And by the way, you can listen to the evaluations of the program and see where the ones that you could have had an impact. So you're going to eventually have that staff meeting or that meeting with the head coach, and the head coach is going to talk about these are the things we didn't do well, and some of them are going to sting. And your initial response is to protect yourself. Well, we couldn't do that because he didn't do this, or they didn't do this, or I didn't get the offense took all the good players. That's the natural response. You need to step back. So back to let's identify all the problems. When we identify all those problems, that's where a lot of people stop and they go, well, we'll fix this by going to the 3-3 stack, or we'll fix this by running the air raid. No, you won't. You'll suck at that too. Unless you buy somebody's system who gives you all of the things you're supposed to do, and you do it. But you probably won't do that. You'll probably still want to do it your own way. Okay. I have a few coaches that do everything that we do, and I have a lot of coaches that still do everything their own way, just with a flavor of what we do. You all pay the same price, so it's up to you. But that's our members, right? That's the way it goes. That's just people. Probably 10% are 100% compliant, right? They are 100%. This is what Coach Daniel says to do. This is what I'm going to do. And by the way, they're not the only ones that have success, but usually it's easier for me to figure out and not have to correct them. So anyway, identify the problems, and then we do the why question. This is the easiest thing to do, and eventually you hopefully get to the answer. So we didn't spill down blocks. Why? Well, we didn't drill it. Why? Well, we didn't have enough time in practice. Okay, why? Or, the kids weren't there at practice. Okay, why? And so we drill this down and we figure out that the reason we didn't spill down blocks, why? Why weren't the kids at practice? Why? Well, because they all had to be in tutoring every single day after school. Why? Because they don't pay attention in class. Why? Eventually we figure out eventually we find the root cause, which is we've got to get these kids to pay attention in class or they're never going to spill a down block. And you figure out you don't need to go run a different defense. You need to get these kids doing what they're supposed to do in class. So, okay, our problem is not the 4-2-5 or the drill or the practice schedule. The problem is our academics. The problem is that these kids aren't being held accountable for their academics, and the school is bailing them out by letting them go to tutoring and doing the work that they should have done in class in tutoring when they should be at practice. And so what's happening is that 45 minutes of a class period every day is getting wasted, and that's taking away 45 minutes of individual time, which causes you to not be able to spill down blocks, which causes you to lose football games, and everybody thinks you're a bad, dumb football coach. But it's because the school is letting the kids bail themselves out.
Right.
And and so that's what we got to fix. Okay, great. Now at least we know we got to fix. That's an off-season evaluation. That's not necessarily the problem, but you can see when we got there. So if I'm the defensive line coach and I go, well, we didn't get pass pressure. Why? We treated every single down the exact same. We eventually get to our kids don't understand football and didn't understand that it's 3rd and 12 and it's a pass rush situation. And so we got no pressure because they're treating it just like it's 1st and 10 or 2nd and 2 or 3rd and 2 or 4th and 2. We're all down in a 4-point stance, digging the ground and crabbing and crawling, and it's 3rd and 11. We're just getting sprawled by the offense.
They might run power there, Coach.
They might. I've given up a 65-yard trap on a 3rd and 20 because a wing T team just says,
"Let's go."
A wing T team just goes, "We ain't got to play for that. Run trap."
So we catch them slipping,
and they do. So
they do.
So I would identify in each one of those areas, the process to me would be to identify the problems and then start asking why. And do not stop asking why until you get on every single one of them, until you get to a real root problem. Because if you go back to that defensive line problem, most coaches would stop at the drill or the system or maybe if they got that far, if they got past, we're too small, we suck, they don't care. So that's where a lot of coaches stop. Why did we have this problem? Because the offense took all the good players. Stop. They would just stop right there. And I guarantee you almost every coach listening to this has done an evaluation of sorts. Even if this is your first year, you've done an evaluation of sorts on even after a game and been like, it's because the kids suck in some way. They didn't do the game plan. They didn't do. And look, we go out and played the worst game of the entire season, maybe the worst game that we've played in 4 years in our second round playoff game. The first thought is they didn't come to play. That's natural reaction. But then we got to go, why not? Why? And it's easier to do this not from they didn't come to play. It's easier to go, We didn't run the ball. Why? We threw interceptions. Why? We didn't play good on special teams. Why? And break each one of those areas down, and not just we sucked. Why? Because we sucked sends you out into a tree of 9 different why answers, usually.
Right. I love I think there might even be a book on that, but just like, I think it's like the 5 whys or something.
Yes.
Right? Like
Yes.
just keep digging.
Yes.
Just
the 5 whys.
keep going back. There's a reason for things, and it's usually not
It's never what you think.
whatever the surface answer is generally not it, right? Like keep digging for root cause analysis.
And again, that's why you don't listen to people who are not qualified, because all they're qualified to do is point out problems you already know exist, but they are absolutely not qualified to give you solutions because they don't understand.
We took over a team that was 4 wins in 5 years. We won 2 out of 3 games in the not preseason, but the non-district.
Your non-district, yeah.
And a fan out of the stand set my head coach down and said, "I think you need to be in 12 or 13 personnel. You need to get 2 tight ends, 3 tight ends on the field, run the ball." Like, what are you talking about? Number one, we were running the gun T.
Yeah.
Guess how many tight ends are on the game? There's 2.
Yeah. You're not qualified. So
right.
That's it.
So people have dumb takes. Like, and
with anyway. Parents, that's administration, that can be coaches on the staff. Like, is your offensive line coach qualified to coach the receivers? Is your receivers coach qualified to coach the offensive line? Some are, a lot aren't. And that's very few people are qualified to coach your offensive line. Very few. And way fewer are probably qualified to coach the quarterback, but way more think they are.
Everyone's a quarterback guru. And one of those root cause analysis, one of those whys you get back to may be that you just don't have the guys on staff this year. You know what I mean? Like maybe is your offensive line coach qualified to coach the offensive line? Like sometimes you just got to put bodies places.
Sure, but then you go,
but then that comes back to you. Why did you not get them educated or qualified?
Well, right. Exactly. So the question, why is he not qualified?
Because I'm a big extreme ownership guy. So
why doesn't he know the playbook? Yeah.
I will always bring it back to something I did or did not do.
Well, this whole exercise is pointless if it's not things that you have the power to solve or facilitate solving. So either you are going to, in some way, you are the solution. So the solution may be that, the solution may be something that you can do. Often the solution, like this is a football coaching staff. There's a reason that we've got 5 people, 8 people, 12 people. It shouldn't all be one person, but it's very likely that we tend to want to take things on ourselves and solve things ourselves if we recognize that there are things that we can solve. But very well maybe, especially if you're the head coach, you need to facilitate those guys solving it. Why didn't he understand the playbook? I didn't spend enough time teaching him the playbook. That's you. If you spent enough time teaching him the playbook and he still didn't get it, then it is, I stopped. I mean, that's essentially, I stopped before I should have.
Yeah.
And then you have to sit down and have that conversation. And you have to have the conversation of, does this person need to be here? Are they going to change? Are they going to do the same thing? Look, bro, if you're still going to not know the offensive line next year, that's fine. I need JV receivers coaches, but not a varsity offensive line coach. So it's up to you, because part of the job of the head coach is getting the assistants to understand their role in the shortcomings. And I think a lot of times this happens. I'm about done. A lot of times the head coach will identify things that he thinks are problems and will decide on solutions that he wants to implement and skip over the whole part where he talks to the person that caused the change. He'll just come in and be like, we're going to change the defense. And in his mind, he's going, and even if he doesn't say it, or even if he maybe hasn't gone through the process of the whys, he's going, we're going to change the whole defense. And in his back of his mind, he's going, we're going to change to an odd front 33 stack because my defensive line coach didn't get the job done in an even front. And I think we've got to move these guys because he didn't get the job done. And so the defensive line coach never finds out that evaluation, or the defensive line coach feels like this is being done to More common this would be like say as a coordinator. Say you have a defensive coordinator who installed the 4-2-5, and you come to that coordinator and you say, "I think we should run the 3-3." He's resentful because he doesn't want to run 3-3, but also you never had the conversation with him of the problems, the things that he didn't get done in the 4-2-5. Now you have an even bigger problem. He doesn't want to run a 3-3. He doesn't know the 3-3 yet, and he never found out the things that he did wrong because nobody ever told him. And so that's part of your job as an evaluator. It's like those adult conversations are a big deal. When you decide things need to be changed, like going back to the defensive line thing, you can go grab those guys and walk them to class, and you can sit in class with them. But if you don't explain to them, here's the deal. We lost 3 games against gap scheme teams because we could not spill a kick out.
Right.
And it's because you weren't at practice, because you didn't do the things that you were supposed to do in the classroom, and the school, instead of holding you accountable, gives you 45 minutes after school. I really don't like all the stuff that schools do now. At some point, kids need
I don't
to,
either. There's a lot of
kids
there's a
are
lot of
not
weird
accountable for
stuff.
anything. Nobody can get a 0. Bro, people get zeros. You do nothing. You know what that is? A 0. And the kids aren't held accountable. And so, yeah, you got to keep him all year long. He didn't go ineligible or anything like that. But, and so you sit him down and he goes, because in his mind, what's he thinking? Well, I don't have to do anything in class. I've got 45 minutes of tutoring after school, and that means I don't have to go. So I do all the things that I was supposed to do in class. But in class, all my friends were there. So it was fun to not do
Right.
anything or to sleep. And then I go to the tutoring and I get the things done, and I don't have to go to practice. This is great. Why would they do anything else? And you have to sit them down and you have to have that adult conversation with a 16-year-old, which is hard, but you have to have it and say, that's not going to fly. Can't do that here. Yeah.
I think we punched all the holes.
I think we just
There's a lot more to it.
Cause a lot of holes. There's so much involved in this.
You've got to, like, even when I was writing up the questions, I'm thinking like, what coaches are going to be here, which are leaving, which have I developed to the point that I want them to be here, but they have to leave because they're ready to go do other bigger things.
Who are we going to elevate? Who are we going to?
You start talking players and like who's graduating, who's going to transfer. Unfortunately, we have to think about that here.
Mm-hmm.
I think what did we do to develop you talked earlier about my JV or my freshman or junior high kids aren't developed enough when they get to me. Roster turnover is a thing. There's so many things going into
graduating.
Yeah, but I love the route this episode took of just asking why, practicing extreme ownership, understanding that there's probably a change you could have made. And you kind of said it in jest, but it honestly might be going and grabbing your freaking defensive tackle's hand and taking him to class. Going, it's kind of the old mom treatment, right?
No, like, I'm not kidding. Like, obviously, you can't do that like always, but at the very least, can I get the English teacher's cell phone and just shoot her a text at the end of the day and say, "Hey, shoot me a number. Shoot me a 1 through 10 or 1 through 5."
Yeah.
Every day, I'm just going to shoot you a text after class, and I'm just going to say, "How was Jimmy today?" All you got to do is shoot me a number, and if that number's a 4 or a 5, we're cool. If that number's a 1, I'm either going to show up tomorrow or something, or I'm going to get him.
Got to pay your dues.
He's going to hear about it. All I need is a number. I don't need to take up that English teacher's time. I hate all that stuff that takes up the teacher's time. Can you just shoot me a number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's a 1, if it's a 2, I don't even need an explanation. It really doesn't matter to me, right? If he's a 1, I got a problem, and I'm going to go solve it. Like if he's a 5, I better not be at tutoring. If he was a 5 in class, and he still has to go to tutoring, what the hell was class for?
You got a point. Yeah, I could talk for another hour about all the dumb stuff that's going on in schools these days.
That's why I'm not there.
Let's work to close it
Oh,
out.
no.
We did check all the boxes. We've talked all the pieces. Look, evaluation's a big thing. Take it serious, and you can't be so much of a narcissist that none of these responses matter. If someone tells you you're bad at something, it's probably because you're bad at it. Yes, there is a version of this where, like Joe said, they have to be qualified to tell you you're bad at it. But you can't be the head football coach and be like, only the AD is qualified to tell me that I'm bad at something. Because realistically, I've seen some of those ADs, and they're not even all of them are that good.
Most of the
right?
ADs aren't qualified to tell you.
Right.
Because they're not,
So
again, they're not there.
you've got to find your circle that is not an echo chamber, that's not just going to pat you on the back because they're your friend. I have people that right now I could text them that are my good friends, and they'll tell me, you sucked at this. You were good at this. As a matter of fact, I was reading through, I'm prepping some online forums, and Coach Collins gave me a evaluation and was brutally honest, and I loved it, right? Because you don't get better if your friends lie to you.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
So
It's great if you have, hopefully, you know some coaches that are on other staffs. And after the season, hey, dude, can you just tell me, like, what'd you think of when you put the
Look,
film
I
down?
have my job right now because me and the OC that whipped my ass at a Wasso freshman, we got together, and then all of a sudden he was like, hey, come on. And now I'm on staff with them, right? It's the same thing. Like, we got better because of each other, and then we joined forces. Sure. So it is what it is. All right, man, let's pay some bills and get out of here.
Yeah, check out joedanielfootball.com/system. You can get the guide that I put together on building your complete defensive system, building your ultimate defensive system. It's going to have the things that need to be in a defensive coaching system. It's going to have what is a system, what is in a system, how do you install that new system, how do you go about making those changes if you decide that you need to either install a new system or revamp your system or clean it up. And then the 5 mistakes that you must avoid with that system, that if you don't avoid those mistakes, you're just going to be sabotaged from the start. Again, I think way too many people think that the X's and O's are the solution to the problem, and they very rarely are the solution to the problem. Very, very rarely does it fix everything. So despite the people in the stands who think that, like, you need to be running this or nothing else works, like that's dumb. Don't listen to them. They're not qualified. So check it out. Go to joedanielfootball.com/system.
Awesome. I guess I will pitch the patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. As we get into the off season, I'll be doing some how-to videos, some graphics works, creating, there's a lot of people don't understand recruiting side. I'm finding out, like, what your kids need to be doing in recruiting so that recruiters can talk to them, so they can get offers. If you're whining that your senior doesn't have any offers and he's a good player, he probably doesn't have the rest of that stuff done. Simple stuff. Patreon.com/Chamberlain Football Consulting. Find a tier that fits you. What sales are opening and closing? This comes out next week, which is the 10th-ish. It'll come out the 12th of December.
No idea.
Awesome.
JDFB is open for enrollment, probably.
Let's go. Better get in while you can, because it's not always open. You'll be stuck on a wait list wishing you could get in. Social media, I am at Coach Chambo OK on Twitter/X. You can email me at chamberlainfootballconsulting@gmail.com. Email me. Let's talk ball. I also have a website by the same name, and then I already talked about the Patreon and the YouTube by the same name. Go there. I'm putting some content out. I'm not super good at that yet. Joe's the guy. Joe, where are you at on how can people reach you?
You can find our social medias at Joe Daniel Football on TikTok and on Instagram. Facebook.com/JoeDanielFootball. YouTube is JoeDanielFootball.com/YouTube. And then what did I miss? Joe at JoeDanielFootball.com. That's kind of, you might get me for some stuff. You might not. Twitter is at FootballInfo. I am not on the social medias. I have all of those things. They are managed. They have some good stuff on them, but you're probably not going to get me on them.
Become an insider.
Yes.
Go to the chalkboard forum. Ask your questions. The podcast is at the FBCP on Twitter/X. If this is your first time listening to the Football Coaching Podcast, please be sure to subscribe so you won't miss any future episodes. You can find us on your favorite podcatcher, especially Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You've been listening for a while. Please leave us a review. Look, we're looking for 4 or 5, whatever it is, stars, thumbs up, whatever they're doing nowadays. If it isn't that, let us know why. It's probably something.
We'll probably assume you're not qualified. I'm not kidding.
We will take all of these evaluations seriously
No, we do this podcast for certain people.
with the 5 whys. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Football Coaching Podcast. Remember, coach simple, play fast, win.